I'm Kimberly Reynolds, 32, a tech executive, built my entire life from the ground up, no shortcuts, no handouts. And after years of relentless saving side hustles, late nights, early mornings, I finally bought the one thing I used to only dream about: a stunning seaside villa in Cape Cod. That house wasn't just a place to live. It was my sanctuary, my reward, my symbol of independence and success. I never imagined that while I was halfway across the globe, 6,000 miles away, in Tokyo on business, the people I trusted most would betray me in a way I couldn't even comprehend. And what they didn't know, their betrayal, would peel back layers of family secrets that had been buried for decades, truths none of us were ready for. But before we dive in, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you've ever felt like your own family took advantage of your success, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what happened next, it still leaves me speechless. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I always felt different. Not in some quirky standout way, but like I didn't quite belong in my own family. Our 2-story house on Maple Street fit 4 people comfortably, but somehow always had room for only 3 emotionally. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Reynolds, never actually said they favored my younger sister, Stephanie. They didn't have to. Their actions spelled it out crystal clear. Stephanie wanted new soccer cleats. She had them in a week. I asked for a graphing calculator for my advanced math class. Save up your babysitting money. Kimberly, her art projects covered the fridge. My academic trophies gathered dust in the hallway closet. And it wasn't about money. It was about effort, attention, validation, stuff I could never quite get from them, no matter how hard I tried. So I stopped trying. I got focused, obsessed really with school, with being better, with creating a life where I never had to ask them for anything. Stephanie floated through high school, decent grades, popular, always surrounded by friends. Me, I graduated valedictorian, full ride to MIT, no backup plan, no safety net, just ambition and caffeine. College wasn't glamorous. My scholarship covered tuition, but not much else. So I hustled, 3 part-time jobs, morning coffee shifts, library weekends, evenings tutoring students who probably had way more support than I ever did. My roommate Diane used to find me passed out on textbooks, gently nudging me awake. Kim, eat something. You're going to collapse. I appreciated her concern, but I had a mission, and I wasn't going to slow down for anything. Eventually, it paid off. My first job out of school was at a promising tech startup. My starting salary, more than both my parents earned combined. I thought maybe they'd be proud. But when I told them all I got was my dad's half smile and a grumble, "Don't let it go to your head, Kimmy." Tech bubbles burst all the time. Meanwhile, Stephanie dropped out of community college after 1 semester. Then it started her spiral. Retail jobs, sketchy relationships, and eventually gambling. First time I heard about it, she owed 15 grand to a casino in Atlantic City. My parents called in a panic. I wired the money, just like that. "It's just a phase," Mom said. "She made a mistake. She won't do it again." Spoiler, she did, again and again. 27,000 in online poker losses, 35 grand in sports betting. Every time it was the same playbook. My parents would cry, beg, plead, and I'd transfer the money, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand to see them so distraught. By the time I was 29, I had climbed all the way to Executive VP of Product Development. Our company had gone public. My stock options vested, and for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. That's when I did. It bought my dream home, a gorgeous $1.8 million villa on the Cape Cod shoreline. 3 bedrooms, ocean views, hardwood floors. It wasn't just a house, it was everything I had worked for, standing in bricks and beams. The first time I walked through the front door, I stood in the sunlit living room and cried. Not the sad kind of cry. The overwhelmed I did this cry. The kind of cry where you realize every sacrifice you made was worth it. No one else was there. I didn't invite anyone, not even Diane. I wanted that moment for myself. I chose every piece of furniture with care. No clutter, just intention. My home office faced the Atlantic. The guest rooms empty. I wasn't ready to share the space, not casually, not even with family. But eventually I invited them, my parents and Stephanie. Their reactions, telling. My dad whistled at the decor. My mom kept mentioning the maintenance costs. Stephanie. She was all questions. Where do you keep the important documents? What kind of security system is this? You really need all this space, Kim. That night over dinner on the deck, my mom sipped her wine and said, "It's just seems wasteful for one person." I smiled, said nothing, poured myself another glass. I didn't buy the villa because I needed it. I bought it because I earned it, because I could. That night they went to bed and I stayed out on the beach barefoot in the sand, watching the moon over the waves. That house wasn't just beautiful, it was mine. A line in the sand between who I used to be and who I had become. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the very thing I saw as a symbol of my independence would soon become the centerpiece of a betrayal so deep it would break everything I thought I knew about my family. The Tokyo trip couldn't have come at a better time in my career. Our company was expanding into Asian markets, and as EVP, I was the natural choice to lead negotiations. This wasn't just a business trip, it was the business trip. Closing this deal could mean a promotion to Chief Operating Officer, the next big step I had worked years for. 3 weeks in Tokyo, fully covered, high-level negotiations on a $50 million contract. This was the moment everything could change. Over lunch, the week before, I told Rebecca, my best friend since college, what was at stake. "This is it, Bex," I said, trying to keep the nerves out of my voice. "It could change everything for me." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "And your family? They gonna survive without their walking ATM for 3 weeks?" She meant it as a joke, half joking anyway. She had seen the toll all those late-night family calls had taken on me over the years. "They'll have to," I replied. "I told them this trip is important. No emergencies, no drama, no money requests. I'm off limits." The weekend before I left, I stopped by my parents' place for dinner. Stephanie was there, surprisingly interested in my travel plans. "So, you'll be in Tokyo the whole time?" she asked between bites of pasta, trying to sound casual. "The villa will just be empty. I've got a great security system," I replied, "and neighbors who keep an eye out." She twirled her fork. "If you need someone to house sit." "Thanks, but I've got it covered." I cut her off, trying not to make it obvious how uncomfortable her eagerness made me. She didn't press it, but something in her glance, shared briefly with our father, stuck with me. It felt off. But I brushed it aside. I had a flight to catch, a deal to close, a future to secure. The first week in Tokyo went better than expected. The Japanese execs respected my directness and professionalism. We were making serious progress. I called my assistant Jessica every evening to check in and make sure there weren't any fires back home. Everything seemed calm until it wasn't. It was day 10. I had just finished reviewing presentation materials in my hotel room when I saw an email from my father. Subject line update on family matters. I expected a mundane message. maybe something about the dog or a neighborhood update. Instead, my world detonated in a single paragraph. Kimberly, your mother and I have sold your Cape Cod property to help Stephanie out of a difficult situation. She got in deep with some casino debts again, about $1.2 to $2 million this time. We know you've always helped her in the past, and since you're doing well now, we figured you wouldn't mind. You didn't need all that space anyway, right? The new owners are taking possession next week. We've already moved your personal items to our garage. Love, Dad. I blinked at the screen, convinced I had read it wrong. I reread it. Then again, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. This couldn't be real. They couldn't sell a house they didn't own. That wasn't how anything worked. I called my dad. No answer. My mom straight to voicemail. Stephanie, nothing. Panic surged through me. I dialed Rachel, my neighbor, back in Cape Cod. Kimberly, she answered with hesitation. Oh, honey, I was wondering when you'd call. What's going on? My voice cracked. There were people at your place yesterday with a real estate agent. Your dad was showing them around. I thought you knew. The room spun. I could barely breathe. I hung up and immediately called my attorney in Boston. Didn't care that it was 3:00 a.m. there. There's no way they could legally sell it, right? I asked, frantic. He paused. Unless you gave someone power of attorney. A wave of nausea hit me. Years ago, during an emergency appendectomy, I had given my dad temporary power of attorney. Had I ever officially revoked it? I couldn't remember. They also had a spare key one I gave them for emergencies. The day I moved in. Everything blurred. I barely remember sending my attorney the villa documents at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. But by mid-afternoon, he confirmed the unthinkable. The sale had gone through 3 days prior for $1.2 million, well below market value. The signatures looked legit at first glance. But something was off. We'll need a forensic document expert, my attorney told me. But it's possible they forged your signature using older documents. I ended the call, then threw up in the hotel bathroom. My villa, my home, my sanctuary, sold like it was a used car, all behind my back, by my parents. And for what? To pay off Stephanie's gambling debts again. The email echoed in my mind like a bad dream. You didn't need all that space anyway, right? The casual tone, the complete disregard, as if my life, my success, my hard-earned achievement was just another family asset to be redistributed, like leftovers after dinner. And somehow, I still had to show up to a major presentation in less than 3 hours. I splashed water on my face, concealer on my eyes, threw on my most powerful suit, a navy blue with clean pinstripes. I would not let them take this from me too. Somehow I delivered the presentation. I answered every question. I even smiled. No one in that boardroom knew I was dying inside. Later that evening, I received another email, this time from my mother. Kimmy, please don't be upset about the house. You're always so dramatic about these things. Stephanie really needed us. These weren't nice people she owed. Family has to come first. You can always buy another vacation home with your big salary. Love, Mom. Vacation home, like it was a timeshare. A bonus, a toy. That email broke me in a way the first one hadn't. With trembling hands, I opened a new tab, drafted a report to the Boston Police Department. Theft, fraud, property valued at $1.8 million. Family or not, this was criminal. As I hit send, I realized something that chilled me to my core. Maintaining composure at work while your life collapses. It's like smiling while chewing glass. But I had no other choice. The hours after filing that police report were the longest of my life. I sat there in my Tokyo hotel room, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every surface felt unfamiliar, every sound too loud or too quiet. My phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing with messages from my parents. At first, my dad's texts were flippant. "You're overreacting as usual. Calm down." Then they turned bitter. "Can't believe you'd involve the police in a family matter. After everything we've done for you." Then came the desperation. "Please, Kim, call off the cops. We can fix this. We're still your family." My mother left me a series of increasingly emotional voicemails. "Kimberly, we never meant to hurt you. We were desperate. Stephanie's life was in danger. Please understand, honey. Please." And, "Stephanie," radio silence. Not a single call, not one message, not even a fake apology. By the third day, I couldn't pretend anymore. At a working lunch with colleagues, I knocked over a glass of water and just froze. The water soaked the table papers, everything. But I couldn't move. I stood there staring at the spill tears falling silently down my face. Amanda Chun, my boss and mentor, didn't say a word. She gently placed a hand on my back and guided me out of the conference room and into her suite. "Kimberly," she said softly, "something's clearly wrong. Talk to me." And I did. I told her everything. About the villa, the betrayal, the police report, all of it. I rarely showed vulnerability at work, but something broke open in me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. To my surprise, Amanda didn't rush to fix it or offer generic advice. She just listened. Her expression darkened with every detail I shared. "My dad embezzled from his company when I was in college," she told me. "Used my name on some accounts. Took me years to clear my credit." I blinked. "Seriously?" She nodded. "Family financial betrayal leaves scars. I know exactly how you feel." Then, without missing a beat, she picked up her phone, called her assistant, and started rearranging our schedule. "We'll create time for you to handle this. The deal matters, but not more than your life. Let us help." That one moment, her response was a lifeline. She even looped in our company's legal department, who provided additional resources I hadn't even thought of. Legal counseling, emotional support, risk assessments for personal and digital security. By that evening, I had a much clearer understanding of what was ahead. Detective Laura Morgan from the Boston Police Department called me on video chat the next morning. "Ms. Reynolds," she said, her voice firm but kind, "I want you to know we're taking this very seriously. We've frozen the sale proceeds. The buyers have been informed the property may have been obtained through fraud." "Will my parents be arrested?" I asked. My voice shook not with fear, but with a confusing mix of sadness and rage. "That depends. Right now we're securing evidence, but I'll be honest, it would help if you could return to Boston soon." "I can't," I replied. "Not yet. If I leave now, the Tokyo deal could fall apart, and this deal, it's everything." "I understand," she said. "We'll proceed on our end. Just be ready for updates when you're back." I hung up and sat still for a long time. My parents' messages kept rolling in. My dad was now pleading. My mom's voicemails were sobbing apologies. But Stephanie, still nothing. It wasn't until day 5 after the report that I finally heard her name again. Detective Morgan reached out. "We've interviewed your sister." And I asked, bracing myself, "Well, her version doesn't exactly line up with your parents." She claims she only owed around $400,000, not $1.2 million. "No," Morgan said. "She says your parents exaggerated to justify the villa sale, and we're starting to think she may be telling the truth." That number, the $1.2 million. Something about it had felt off from the beginning. I looked out my window at the Tokyo skyline lights shimmering against the night. Everything I thought I understood about my family was unraveling. "Is there any chance I can get my house back?" I asked. "Not right away," she said. "The sale's been frozen, but we can't hand it back until we finish collecting evidence. Right now, it's a crime scene." That night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I stared at the ceiling phone, in hand eyes, red and burning. And then I made a choice. This betrayal wasn't going to end in tears and therapy. I needed truth. I needed clarity. I needed someone who could dig even deeper. The next morning, I met with Marcus Wright, a private investigator recommended by our legal team. Former FBI, sharp eyes, calm voice, and a specialty in exactly the kind of mess I was in: family fraud and financial crimes, a niche I didn't even know existed until now. Family financial betrayals more common than you think, Marcus said, tapping notes into a leather-bound notebook. But this case, the scale, the manipulation, the forged documents, it's unique. I want everything I told him. I want to know where the money went, who was involved. I want the truth, all of it. He nodded. 3 days later, he called me back into his office. His walls were now covered with printouts, financial timelines, surveillance photos, and charts that connected names and wire transfers. He pointed at one of the photos, a tall, angular man with slicked back hair. Your sister's boyfriend, Marcus said. Name's James Mercer. Not just a casual gambler. He's connected to known loan sharks, operating out of both Atlantic City and Boston. He's been investigated twice for fraud. I felt a pit open in my stomach. Is Stephanie in danger? I asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. Possibly, but not the way your parents claimed. He handed me a printout of a wire transfer. This is from your father's retirement account, he said. Transferred to an LLC controlled by James Mercer. This happened 8 months ago, long before the villa sale. My mind was spinning. So my dad was paying Stephanie's boyfriend directly. Marcus pinned more documents to the board. Your father has his own gambling problem, Kimberly, and it goes back years. Hearing Marcus say the words out loud didn't make them any easier to absorb. My father has a gambling problem. I repeated, blinking, like the sentence might rearrange itself into something that made more sense. Has for years, Marcus said. It's been carefully hidden, but we traced patterns of withdrawals payments to shell companies and transfers to offshore accounts, all consistent with gambling debts and loan shark repayments. I felt cold all over. My father, the man who used to scoff at my tech money like it was play money, who told me to be careful not to let it go to my head, the same man who scolded me for spending too much on a coffee table. That man had been living a secret life, one that ended up costing me everything. Marcus pointed at the timeline on the wall. Stephanie got introduced to casinos by your father, he said, drawing a line between two documents. He told her it was a game, a way to learn about risk. That's when her addiction started. It's a textbook pattern, generational gambling behavior. The more I listened, the clearer it became. Stephanie hadn't just stumbled into debt. She'd been pulled into a toxic cycle that my father had been living in for more than a decade. And the $400,000, that was just her debt. The rest, almost $800,000, was his. They hadn't just sold my home to help my sister. They sold it to plug a hole he'd been digging in secret for years. Over the next few days, the full picture began to emerge. With Marcus's investigation, the Boston police's findings, and forensic accountants digging into financial records, the scale of deception became undeniable. My father had racked up nearly $600,000 in gambling debt with Mercer's associates alone. He'd drained my mother's inheritance slowly, steadily, always covering his tracks. When Stephanie's own debts became too public to hide, he saw an opportunity to solve both problems with my money, with my house. It was desperate, but worse, it was calculated. They knew I was going to Tokyo. They knew the villa would be empty. They had old power of attorney paperwork and access to my home. My signature had been forged using scanned documents pulled from a file in my old bedroom drawer, documents I didn't even remember leaving behind. This wasn't a moment of panic. This had been planned. And it wasn't just my father. Marcus found evidence that my mother had helped arrange the initial meetings with the realtor. Security footage from the villa, stored on a backup hard drive I'd locked in a wall safe, showed her giving tours, showing off the kitchen, like she'd lived there for years, laughing, smiling, telling potential buyers my daughter won't mind. I watched that footage from the Tokyo hotel, my hands clenched around a glass of wine that I couldn't even taste. My home, the one I built, sold behind my back, paraded like a showpiece by people who were supposed to love me. But the most painful clip came from the office, my office. My father sitting at my desk, practicing my signature with a ballpoint pen, tracing over an old copy of my driver's license, slowly, carefully, deliberately. That image is burned into my memory. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a betrayal choreographed like a stage play. When I returned to Boston the following week, I went straight from the airport to meet Detective Morgan. She picked me up and drove me into the city, filling me in on what they'd uncovered while I was away. The buyers are cooperating, she said. They're horrified. They thought it was a legitimate deal. We've made it clear they won't be penalized. We're treating them as victims too. And the money I asked. The $1.2 million. We've traced $400,000 to a wire transfer directly to the Golden Horizon Casino in Atlantic City. That part lines up with your sister's story. The other $800,000 was funneled into an offshore account under a company name tied to James Mercer. So it's gone. Not entirely, she said. We're working with the feds. They've frozen the accounts while they investigate. It'll take time, but we may recover a significant portion. My hands tightened into fists in my lap. Stephanie said it was all for her, that she was the reason. She believed it, Morgan said. But based on our interviews, she didn't know about your dad's debts. It hit me then. My sister was just another pawn in all of this. Her addiction was real. Her debt was real. But the manipulation that was orchestrated, not just by Mercer, but by our own father. I couldn't decide what felt worse, that she'd let it happen, or that she might have had no idea how deep it went. Later that day, I met with Harold Greenbound, my family's longtime attorney, the same one who had notarized half of our family's legal documents over the years. I advised against selling the villa he admitted avoiding my eyes. Your father insisted you knew. He told me it was a private arrangement. You should have called me, I said, barely keeping my voice level. I know, he replied, shame flickering in his expression. I failed you professionally. I can't undo that. By then, it didn't even feel like a surprise. Every person I should have been able to trust had fallen short in one way or another. The only thing left to do was face it head on. I arranged a time with the Williamses, the couple who had unknowingly bought my villa, to retrieve the personal items that hadn't yet been moved. They were kind, deeply apologetic. Sarah Williams, a pediatrician from Manhattan, kept saying over and over, "We had no idea. We're so sorry." They gave me an hour. Walking through that space with their furniture mixed in with mine felt like trespassing in my own dream. In the home office, I headed straight for the wall safe. Behind a framed nautical map, I'd hidden a metal vault that no one in my family knew about. Inside was a flash drive, jewelry, critical documents, and most importantly, a full digital archive of financial transactions. Every loan I had ever made to Stephanie, every time I had covered their emergencies, every lie I had been told and believed. I backed up everything and turned the drive over to Detective Morgan. The case wasn't just about the forgery anymore. It was about a pattern of exploitation, one that had stretched back years, maybe longer. And at the center of it was a truth I hadn't been ready to face. My family had never seen my success as mine. They saw it as theirs, available, disposable. They didn't think they stole from me. They thought they reclaimed what they were entitled to. 2 weeks after returning from Tokyo, I sat in the passenger seat of Detective Morgan's unmarked car parked down the street from my parents' home. It looked exactly the same as it had my entire life: white siding, blue shutters, a small porch swing, squeaking in the wind. Everything looked normal. But nothing about what was about to happen was normal. My attorney had advised against this visit. You don't need to confront them in person, he'd said. Let the legal system do the talking. But I had to see them. I had to look them in the eyes and hear them say it. Detective Morgan agreed to wait nearby. Not to ambush them, not to arrest them on the spot, just to be close enough in case things spiraled out of control. I rang the doorbell. My father opened the door. His expression was tight defensive. His eyes darted behind me as if checking to see who I'd brought. My mother hovered behind him, red-eyed, worn down. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, emotionally, like guilt had shrunk her spirit. You've really done it now, my father said, before I could even speak. Calling the cops on your own family. Do you have any idea what you've put your mother through? I stepped inside but didn't move toward the living room. I wasn't there to make myself comfortable. What I've put you through, I said. You stole and sold my home. You forged my signature. You broke the law. And you betrayed me in a way I will never forget. We had no choice. My mother blurted, her voice already cracking. Stephanie was in danger. She owed money to dangerous people. We didn't know what else to do. I kept my voice steady. She owed $400,000, not $1.2 million. So where's the rest? Where's the other $800,000, Dad? My father's face turned ghostly pale. My mother's head snapped toward him, confused. What is she talking about, Thomas? I pulled out my tablet and loaded the financial evidence Marcus had compiled. Transfers from my dad's retirement account to James Mercer's shell companies. The pattern was undeniable. These are your payments, I said, holding the screen up, to the man dating your daughter, a man connected to organized loan sharks, a man who's been under investigation for years. 8 months of transfers, long before you sold my house. My father stammered. Those were investments. I was trying to... What investment uses 5 different fake companies? I shot back. What kind of business deal requires you to launder money through offshore accounts, Dad? My mother sank into the nearest chair. Thomas, what have you done? That was when I realized something that hadn't occurred to me before. She didn't know. She had been part of the betrayal. Yes, but not all of it. Not this. I remembered the inconsistencies in their stories, the different numbers, the timing that didn't add up. I had assumed they were lying together. But now I could see it. My mother had believed him, trusted him, enabled him, but she hadn't known the full truth. I turned the tablet toward her and pressed play on a clip from the villa security footage, my father sitting at my desk, practicing my signature. Her voice in the background, telling someone on the phone that Kimberly never has to know she's too busy with her career to care. She watched in silence, tears rolling down her face. You both betrayed me, I said, but you, Dad, you orchestrated this, you created this. He finally broke, slumped into the armchair like someone had pulled the air out of his body. It started small, he said, voice flat. Foxwoods, just a few weekend trips. After I got passed over for partner at the firm, I needed something that felt like winning. His eyes glazed over as the confession poured out. 15 years of addiction, secret bank accounts, constant pressure to appear successful. He used my mother's inheritance, told her the investments were sound. He taught Stephanie how to play blackjack under the guise of understanding odds. He lied and lied and lied. And then he hit a wall. When Mercer's people threatened to expose him to his former firm, he panicked. That's when he decided to sell my home. The house I built, my villa. I stood there numb, trying to feel something other than disgust. You always seemed so invincible, my mother whispered. Stephanie needed us. You never did. You didn't act like you needed anyone. That's not a compliment, I replied. You're telling me I'm easier to steal from because I'm strong enough to survive it. We were going to pay you back, my father said weakly. With what casino winnings? There was a silence that filled the entire room, like a scream in reverse. Then I placed a folder on the coffee table. These are your options, I said. Option 1, you fully confess, cooperate with the investigation, enter treatment for gambling addiction. I'll ask the DA for leniency. I let that sit for a beat. Option 2, you keep lying, and I pursue the maximum possible charges. We'll communicate only through attorneys. You'd send your own parents to prison, my father asked, his voice cracking. You already stole your daughter's life savings, I replied. You tell me where the line was drawn. It was then we heard the front door open. Stephanie. She looked exhausted, pale, thinner than I remembered. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Kim, she whispered. I never thought they would actually go through with it. I didn't say a word. I just stared. They told me it was just for appraisals, for insurance. Then, Dad said we were listing it. I tried to stop it, but James, he took my phone. He's been tracking everything I do. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing faint bruises shaped like fingers on her upper arm. I got away yesterday. I've been driving around trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to scream, cry, hug her, run, everything at once. But all I could say was, you should have called me. I wanted to, she said, her voice barely audible. I thought I could fix it, but it kept getting worse. I was in so deep, I didn't know how to come back. The air shifted. Suddenly, this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a family collapse. Years of secrets bubbling up and spilling over. I took a deep breath. This ends now, I said. All of it. We all sat in silence for a long moment. Me standing, my mother hunched in the corner, my father deflated in his chair, and Stephanie curled on the edge of the couch like she was trying to disappear into the cushions. The storm had already hit, but this was the eye of it, that heavy spinning quiet that settles right before the next round of fallout. I need full cooperation from all of you, I said, finally breaking the silence. I'm talking confessions, financial transparency, rehab, everything. No half-truths, no maybe-laters, full accountability. My mother wiped her face with a trembling hand. You're giving us a choice. I'm giving myself a choice, I said, because if I don't do this on my terms, the legal system will do it without me, and it won't be nearly as kind. Stephanie looked up. What about James? We're filing a restraining order against him, I said, and the police already have enough evidence to arrest him. Your testimony will help seal it. She gave a small nod, like the weight of finally being believed was just starting to sink in. My father looked from me to the folder on the table. We'll cooperate, he said quietly. We'll do whatever it takes. I didn't respond. I couldn't trust words anymore. I would believe action, and only over time. As I stepped outside, Detective Morgan emerged from her car, meeting me at the walkway. Well, she asked. They're going to confess, I said. All of them. She nodded slowly. Good. I'll follow up with them individually. And Stephanie, I asked. We'll arrange a safe interview location, Morgan said, and put her in touch with support services. Based on what she's saying, there may be grounds for additional charges against Mercer beyond fraud, possibly assault, coercion, even trafficking, if we dig deep enough. I didn't say anything right away. The idea that this whole mess was even bigger than I thought didn't surprise me. It just made me feel tired. No one should ever have that kind of control over someone else, I muttered. Morgan nodded as if she'd heard it 1,000 times before. The next few days moved like sludge. My parents made their confessions to police cross-referencing the financial documents I'd provided and backing up everything with timelines and personal emails. Stephanie's statement detailed the psychological manipulation and control James Mercer had exerted over her, and with that, a warrant for his arrest was issued. 2 weeks later, Mercer was arrested at a casino in Atlantic City. He didn't resist. The news came with a photo, him in handcuffs, flanked by 2 federal agents. It didn't make me feel better exactly, but it felt fair. Justice doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like quiet. The district attorney contacted me soon after. "We're prepared to move forward with formal charges," she said, "but we're also considering rehabilitation-centered resolutions for your family, given your request." I had asked for leniency, but only if my parents and Stephanie cooperated completely and followed through with treatment and restitution. I didn't want them punished to destroy them. I wanted them to change. My father was sentenced to 6 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation and mandatory gambling addiction treatment. My mother received probation community service and court-ordered financial counseling. Stephanie entered a treatment center that specialized in both gambling addiction and trauma recovery. Meanwhile, the villa's sale was officially invalidated, but the situation wasn't simple. The Williams family, the unsuspecting buyers, had already poured money into renovations and moving costs. Rather than drag them through more chaos, I negotiated a solution. They could lease the property until the court process was finished. If I chose to sell afterward, they'd have first right to buy legally this time. And I didn't have a home anymore. Hotels were fine for a week or 2, but they're no place to grieve or heal. Rebecca, my best friend, the one who joked about my family seeing me as an ATM, opened her guest house without hesitation. "You can stay as long as you need," she said, "and you're not paying rent. End of discussion." She helped me move what little I had left from the villa, boxes of clothes, some furniture, the hard drive that had cracked the entire case wide open. "You've been through hell," she said, taping a box shut, "and you still showed up to every board meeting, still got the job done." My promotion to COO became official that month. Amanda made the announcement during a company-wide meeting, naming my resilience and ethical leadership as qualities that inspired the entire executive team. I smiled politely, but inside I was still trying to reconnect with the version of myself who used to care about those kinds of accolades. Jessica, my assistant, became more than just a right hand at work. She helped me reorganize my financials, sort through decades of digital records, and rebuild what had been broken. "You've always been the one looking out for everyone else," she said. "Let us help you for once." At first, I felt awkward accepting support, but I quickly realized something. I'd spent so long being the strong one that I had no idea how to ask for help when I was the one drowning. I started therapy. Dr. Meredith Lewis specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. In our first session, she told me, "You're not just grieving the house, you're grieving the family you thought you had, the trust, the narrative of who they were supposed to be." I cried. For the first time in weeks, I cried until I couldn't breathe. But it was a start. Through my therapist, I found a support group for victims of family financial exploitation. At first, I was reluctant to go. I didn't want to hear more stories of pain. I was already drowning in my own. But I'm glad I did, because those people, those strangers, understood without me needing to explain. Some had been robbed of inheritances, others of retirement accounts or college funds. But the one thing we all had in common, our families didn't just take our money, they took our trust. One woman, Diana, told me her own mother emptied her college fund for a shopping addiction. I kept asking myself if I should just forgive her, she said. But the truth is, forgiveness doesn't mean letting them hurt you again. It just means you stop bleeding from the wound. That line stuck with me. Stephanie and I slowly began to rebuild. From cautious check-ins during her treatment to more honest conversations about our childhood, our patterns, and how much of her identity had been shaped by being the one who needed saving. They needed me to be helpless, she said, one afternoon. Your success, it scared them. It made everything they'd told themselves about the world feel wrong. But me, my failure made sense to them. It was hard to hear, but also illuminating. For the first time, Stephanie wasn't my responsibility. She was taking responsibility for herself. And that meant everything. Stephanie's insight stuck with me long after that conversation. They needed me to fail, so their excuses felt valid. But they needed her to stay broken so they could feel needed. That wasn't love. That was codependency wrapped in obligation. Over the next several weeks, our relationship shifted from a lifelong game of rescuer and rescued to something more level. We weren't pretending we were close, like when we were kids. We were building something new, something honest. We kept our boundaries, weekly calls, no money talk, no rescuing, just two women trying to survive what their childhoods had turned them into. With my parents, things were different. There was no healing, not really, not yet, maybe not ever. I met with them once a month under supervision, by choice, not by court order. I didn't trust them with anything more than updates on their legal compliance. I didn't tell them where I was living. I didn't share my travel plans. I didn't update them on my finances. They didn't ask which in a way was worse. It told me they still believed the story that I had wronged them by pressing charges. Trust once shattered doesn't come back all at once. It comes back like a house built brick by brick, if it ever comes back at all. Meanwhile, I started discovering the power of chosen family. Rebecca, of course, had always been there, but something about this crisis made our bond feel even more rooted. She wasn't just a best friend. She was my safe place. The one person who never once made me feel like I had to earn support to deserve it. Jessica, my assistant turned confidant, was right behind her. One weekend, she spent 6 hours helping me organize the digital records from the forensic audit. She labeled everything color-coded timelines, even bought donuts so we could take stress breaks. At the end of the day, she looked at me and said, "You're the boss I'd follow into a fire. But more than that, you're a good person. You don't deserve any of this." I didn't say anything. I just hugged her. At work, Amanda continued to be my rock. She shielded me when reporters started sniffing around for interviews. Some journalist had found out about the villa fraud and Mercer's arrest and started digging. But I didn't want a splashy expose on tech executive betrayed by parents. I wanted to change the narrative. So instead, I agreed to an exclusive interview with a financial crimes reporter who specialized in family-based fraud. We focused not on the drama, but the pattern, how adult children are increasingly targeted by their own parents or siblings due to perceived success. It was a tough conversation, but the response was overwhelmingly positive. And more importantly, it opened the door to something greater. Victims started reaching out, not just to me, but to the police, the DA's office, the advocacy group I'd joined. Dozens of people who'd been silenced by shame now had a story they could point to and say, "Me too." So I did what felt natural. I started a foundation. I took a portion of the recovered money. By now we'd retrieved nearly $650,000 of the $1.2 million through offshore account freezes and casino clawbacks, and I put it toward launching an organization for victims of financial exploitation by family. We built an emergency legal fund, created online resources, partnered with trauma counselors and legal experts. The foundation grew quickly. People were desperate for guidance, for stories like mine that told them they weren't crazy, that it wasn't their fault, that setting boundaries didn't make them heartless, it made them survivors. And through it all, I kept working. Being COO gave me more purpose than ever before. My colleagues, many of whom I had kept at arm's length for years, rallied around me. For the first time, I let them. I stopped hiding behind competence and started showing up as a real person. I even started dating again. His name was David, a lawyer I met at a speaking engagement on financial fraud legislation. He was kind, disarmingly funny, and most importantly, he listened without trying to fix me. We took it slow. I was upfront from day one. I've been through hell, I told him. Family betrayal, public scandal, and I'm still figuring out who I am on the other side. He smiled and said, "Then I guess I get to meet the real version of you, not the polished LinkedIn bio." That sounds like a privilege. And somehow I believed him. 6 months after I received that devastating email in Tokyo, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. It wasn't the villa. It didn't have the crashing Atlantic waves or the sprawling deck, but it was mine, leased, not owned, small, not extravagant, but peaceful, clean, safe, Detective Morgan called. "We've got the final asset recovery ruling," she said. "With the funds recovered and the restitution from your parents and Stephanie, you'll receive approximately $1.1 million. It wasn't the full value of the villa, but it was justice. Also, she added, your sister's cooperation helped identify 3 more victims. Mercer's entire operation is starting to unravel, and it's because you spoke up." I sat down on my balcony phone in my hand, eyes locked on the sunset turning the harbor gold. My house was gone. My sense of safety had been shattered. But in its place, I had built something new. 6 months, half a year. It's strange how time can be both a flash and an eternity. In 6 months, my parents had gone from trusted to convicted. Stephanie had gone from the family's dependent to someone taking charge of her life. And I, once buried in work and family obligation, had somehow emerged from the wreckage as someone new, not fixed, but healing. Spring was returning to Boston. The mornings were lighter, the air less bitter, and the weight on my chest didn't crush me quite so hard when I woke up. I visited the foundation office often. We'd rented a small but bright space downtown. Our client list was growing fast, people who had nowhere else to turn when their own families became their predators. One woman, a school teacher, told me her brother had stolen her inheritance. Another, a young man fresh out of law school, said his parents had taken out loans in his name. Each story different, but painfully familiar. "You're helping us turn pain into something powerful," one of them told me. And she was right. That became our mission, to transform financial betrayal into strength, truth, and forward motion. We held workshops, partnered with legal clinics, and ran digital campaigns. I used my tech background to streamline our systems and build an anonymous reporting platform. The team kept growing. Volunteers, donors, experts, survivors. Through helping others, I was helping myself. Therapy, meanwhile, became the non-negotiable part of my week. At first, I hated going. Sitting in that soft chair, talking about feelings I'd buried under spreadsheets and stock options for decades felt like failure. But slowly it became sacred. Dr. Lewis helped me see that I hadn't just lost a home, I'd lost the belief that my family would protect me. That belief had been the foundation of every rescue I'd offered Stephanie, every uncomfortable dinner I'd hosted, every late-night bank transfer I'd made, without asking questions. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, she said. It changes your operating system. You can't just reboot. You have to rewrite. We worked on that together. We also worked on what it meant to forgive. Not the easy kind, the movie kind. The kind where someone says sorry and you hug and everything is back to normal. No, this was the hard kind. The one where you accept that the people who hurt you may never fully understand the damage they caused. The kind where you decide to stop carrying their guilt just to keep the peace. The kind where you protect your heart without building a fortress so tall no one can get in. One session I finally said it out loud. I don't hate them anymore, but I'll never trust them the same way again. Dr. Lewis nodded. That's not bitterness, that's wisdom. With time, even Stephanie's transformation became something I could admire, not just tolerate. Her rehab team kept me updated at first. She was doing well, attending every session, digging into the patterns that had fueled her addiction, understanding how growing up in a family that always needed a scapegoat made her the perfect candidate for self-destruction. 3 months into the program, she enrolled in community college. I'm studying accounting, she told me during a video call. Turns out I actually understand money. I just used that understanding to destroy myself before. Now I'm trying to build something. It wasn't the old Stephanie. It was someone different, someone new. I saw the change not in what she said, but in what she didn't. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask me to fix anything. She didn't promise redemption. She just showed up honest, messy, and trying. And for the first time, I felt something like hope for her. With my parents, the healing was slower. I agreed to attend one supervised therapy session with them just once, no promises of reconciliation. The goal wasn't to make peace. It was to speak my truth in front of a neutral witness. My father was the first to speak. I've lived a double life for 15 years, he said quietly, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to face it now. I didn't reply. I let the silence say everything it needed to. My mother, more hesitant, admitted her enabling behavior in tears. I thought I was protecting everyone, she whispered. I was really just delaying the explosion. They apologized. But I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't. Instead, I told them what I'd told Dr. Lewis. You didn't just take my house. You took away the version of you I believed in. I'll never see you the same way again, but I'm choosing to let go of the hate so it doesn't poison what's left of me. After the session, I sat in my car for an hour and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I felt empty in a clean way. I had poured it all out. There was nothing left to carry. As summer approached, I made a decision I'd been avoiding. I visited the Cape Cod villa one last time. The Williams family had officially purchased it after the court finalized the case. They graciously agreed to let me walk through the property for closure. Walking up the path, I expected to feel gutted, but what I felt instead was distance. The house was still beautiful. The ocean still roared behind it. But the emotional grip it once had on me was gone. It was just wood and stone and glass. The real rebuilding that had happened in my guest room at Rebecca's house, in therapy, in the foundation, in the honest conversations with Stephanie. In every moment, I chose peace over performance. Before I left the villa, I stood on the back deck, watching the waves, and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for everything, and goodbye." I didn't cry. I didn't linger. I just turned and walked away. Back home in Boston, the air felt lighter. Not because everything was perfect, far from it, but because I had finally stopped waiting for someone else to fix it all. For so long, I thought healing meant resolution, a perfect ending, reunions, tearful apologies, hugging it out. But healing, I learned, is messier. Sometimes it looks like moving forward with a limp. Sometimes it means sitting with grief and not trying to erase it. That's when I decided to write the letters, not to send, just to say what needed to be said to each of them and to myself. I started with my father. Dear Dad, your worth was never supposed to be tied to your career or your bank account. But somewhere along the way, you decided that if you couldn't win, you'd make everyone else lose. You called it protecting your pride. I call it cowardice. You stole from me not just money, but trust. And you didn't do it for survival. You did it to cover up a secret you were too ashamed to face. Still, I hope you do the work. I hope you rebuild something honest from the ashes. Not for me, but for you. Because you've spent enough of your life pretending to be someone you're not. Then to my mother. Dear Mom, love that enables destruction isn't love. You wanted to protect everyone. I get that now. But in protecting Dad from consequences and Stephanie from responsibility, you abandoned me. You once told me I didn't need you the way Stephanie did. But being strong doesn't mean I didn't need to feel safe. I don't hate you, but I won't pretend you didn't fail me when I needed you to be brave. Next, I wrote to Stephanie. Dear Steph, you always had strength in you. You just didn't know what to do with it. Being the broken one let you avoid expectations, but now you're rewriting your story. I see that, and I'm proud of you, not because you're fixing things, but because you finally chose to stop running. I don't know if we'll ever be like we were when we were little. Maybe we shouldn't be, but I'm here, and I believe in you. And finally, to myself, dear Kimberly, your success is valid. Your instincts were right. Your boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. You are not cold for saying no. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You gave more than most would, and when you stopped giving, you were called ungrateful. But you held the line. You didn't let the pain harden you, and that is strength. Writing the letters felt like shedding a second skin. Everything I couldn't say during the chaos, all the words that had been stuck in my throat for months, now they lived on paper where I could see them, touch them, own them. After finishing, I packed the letters in a box and placed it on the highest shelf of my closet, not to forget, but to remind myself that every chapter, no matter how painful, deserves closure. Around the same time, Stephanie invited me to her first class presentation. It was a community college final for her Intro to Financial Literacy course. She stood in front of the class, nervously holding her notes, walking through a case study about debt cycles and predatory lending. She didn't name names, but I knew the story she was telling. It was ours. After class, we walked to her car in silence. You did great, I said. Thanks, she said. It's weird, right? Me giving financial advice. Not weird. Full circle. She laughed, a genuine, clear sound I hadn't heard from her in years. You know, I thought about quitting a dozen times. But then I'd think about you, what you went through, what you still show up for every day, and I'd just keep going. I looked at her and saw not the mess she'd been, but the woman she was becoming. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying her. I felt like I had a sister again. Later that week, I moved out of Rebecca's guest house and into a place of my own, a small 2-bedroom cottage north of the city. It wasn't on the ocean. No crashing waves, no endless horizon. But it was mine. Not a symbol of victory, not a trophy, just a home. The windows let in golden morning light. The air smelled faintly of salt and pine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. I hung new curtains, bought new plates, let Jessica help me choose art for the walls. There was a quiet joy in rebuilding piece by piece, moment by moment. Some mornings, I still wake up expecting to hear the ocean outside my window. Some nights I dream I'm back in the villa, and everything is exactly the way it was before Tokyo, before the email, before everything changed. But then I open my eyes and remember that home is gone, and I survived losing it, because I am not made of bricks and floor plans. I am made of resilience. The day I officially closed the foundation's first major fundraiser, I stood in front of a crowd of donors, volunteers, survivors, and advocates, holding a microphone in one hand and a stack of thank you notes in the other. We had raised over $400,000, enough to fund emergency legal support for more than 120 victims of family financial exploitation, enough to hire trauma counselors, enough to build something that could actually change lives. I cleared my throat, feeling the nerves rise. Public speaking had never rattled me, not during product launches, investor meetings, or boardroom presentations. But this wasn't about business. This was about pain, mine, theirs, ours. I used to think that being strong meant never letting anything crack your surface, I said, looking out over the room. But strength isn't silence. It's not perfection. It's truth. It's being honest about what you've been through and standing up even when your knees are shaking. The applause was soft but real. Afterward, a young woman approached me, maybe 24 or 25. She clutched her purse with both hands like it might float away if she let go. My dad drained my savings account to buy a car for his girlfriend, she said quietly. And my mom told me not to report it, said I was lucky he didn't take more. I didn't ask if she pressed charges. I didn't ask if she still talked to them. I just looked her in the eye and said, "You're not alone." Her shoulders dropped, just a little. That's the thing about betrayal, especially family betrayal. It isolates you. It tells you that you're the problem, that by protecting yourself, you're the one doing harm. But when someone else sees you, really sees you, it breaks the shame. Back at my cottage, life became surprisingly calm. David and I had grown closer, slowly, but intentionally. He knew all of it, the villa, the fraud, the therapy, the pain, and never once tried to minimize it. "You don't scare me," he said once over dinner. "You impress me." I didn't need him to rescue me. I didn't want that. I just wanted someone who understood that I wasn't defined by what happened to me, but by what I chose to do with it. And he did. Rebecca remained my anchor, the sister I picked for myself. We shared wine nights, beach walks, and a shared sense of humor that only comes from surviving something absurd together. Stephanie and I continued our slow, cautious rebuilding. No big declarations, no pretending the past didn't happen, just one step at a time. She called me after finishing her second semester, her voice bubbling with nervous excitement. "I passed with a 3.9 GPA, she said. "Steph, that's incredible." "Yeah," she said, then paused. I think I'm actually good at this." "You are." "I want to help at the foundation," she said. "Maybe not on the front lines, but behind the scenes. Admin work, accounting support. I just want to do something that matters." We brought her in slowly, carefully, with boundaries and oversight. But she proved herself organized, thoughtful, consistent. It wasn't redemption, it was transformation. As for my parents, our relationship settled into something distant but civil. We spoke quarterly, no personal details, just check-ins, no more guilt trips, no more manipulation. They remained in therapy. My father attended every addiction session. My mother worked with a counselor on codependency. They had begun, in their own quiet way, to unravel the knots they'd created over the years. I didn't trust them, but I no longer hated them. And that, I realized, was progress. On the 1-year anniversary of the Tokyo email, the day everything fell apart, I sat on the back porch of my cottage, watching the sun melt into the tree line, and let myself reflect without flinching. I thought about the girl who boarded that flight to Tokyo, proud of her promotion, sure she had finally made it. I thought about the woman who opened that email and felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. And I thought about who I had become since. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't broken, I wasn't the savior anymore, or the victim. I was just me. A woman who built her way out of betrayal. A woman who said enough and meant it. A woman who chose healing over hate. And as the sky turned purple, I whispered the same words I had spoken on the beach at the villa. Thank you and goodbye. But this time I wasn't saying goodbye to a house. I was saying goodbye to the fear, the guilt, the story that told me I was only as valuable as what I could give. And in that goodbye, I opened space for a new kind of life, one rooted in truth, one led by choice, one where love didn't come with strings attached or hidden costs. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you, truly, because sharing this hasn't been easy, but I believe that stories like this, stories rooted in pain and recovery and boundaries and transformation, they matter. If any part of this felt familiar, if it stirred something in your gut or reminded you of your own story, I hope you know you're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own story if you're ready. Like this video if it spoke to you. Subscribe if you want more stories about reclaiming power after loss. And above all, remember this: your boundaries matter, your healing matters, and your story is yours to reclaim. Always,